Climate change is arguably the greatest governance challenge the world has ever faced. It requires transformational shifts in our economies and will exert immense pressure on communities around the world. In responding to climate change, governments are preparing to spend up to $100 billion a year in the coming decade, largely through new and untested channels, often in countries with weak governance. This poses specific corruption risks, which Transparency International addresses in its new Global Corruption Report on climate change.
In terms of climate change, we've got a number of critical elements. We've got very vulnerable communities. We have the reality that we will have very large-scale construction contracts. Those are very vulnerable and susceptible to corruption. We will have very complex carbon markets. Those, again, are very vulnerable to corruption. On the one hand, the broader public understand that climate change is real and it will affect their lives. But secondly, they also have a basic faith that leaders actually will do the right thing. And this will be done by spending large amounts of money in a responsible way. If we do not have high levels of accountability and transparency around public spending in climate change, that public trust will diminish very quickly.
The Global Corruption Report looks at where corruption could derail efforts to combat climate change. It looks at how conflicts of interest can undermine policy decisions. It identifies where new market mechanisms, such as trading in carbon credits, might be susceptible to manipulation. And it looks at where climate change funds are at risk of being diverted or embezzled. It serves as a practical guide for policymakers, governments, and civil society.
You need to fight corruption. You need to build accountable institutions. You need to involve citizens. We will create many new and big bureaucracies in fighting climate change. These need to be done with good governance, not as an afterthought, but in planning how we set them up, how we enable citizens to participate.
Today, many decisions are made at the global level that have huge impacts on people in local communities. However, many local folks feel completely alienated from important global decision-making processes. One of the ways civil society as a whole, Greenpeace included, Transparency International included, have sought to bring local voices into global decision-making processes has been to bring civil society activists who are working in different parts of the world to bring their voice into, for example, climate negotiations in Copenhagen. So how we get local people's voices to be heard also depends on the creativity and innovation of civil society leadership.
The stakes are high. We must invest significantly to meet the challenge of climate change, while making sure that this investment is effective. This is part of our commitment to future generations and our role as stewards of the planet.